The Stellar Beast Academy hung in the darkness of space like a giant metal flower, its petals actually massive training halls where the galaxy's most skilled beast handlers learned their craft. This wasn't some backwater school. This was where 17 different alien species sent their absolute best, their most talented, their most naturally gifted individuals to learn how to bond with creatures that could level cities or tear through starship hulls like paper. Every species had their thing, you know? The Velkari could release pheromones that made even the most aggressive predators docile. The Thornids had this psychic resonance ability where they could literally feel what a beast was feeling and respond accordingly. The crystalline beings used bioelectric pulses that synced up with a creature's nervous system. Each race had evolved over millions of years to develop these incredible, specialized abilities. And then there were humans. The new kids. The species that had only joined the Galactic Council 15 years ago and were still figuring out which fork to use at diplomatic dinners. When the transport shuttle docked at the Academy's main hub, Katie Sullivan stepped out carrying a worn backpack and leading a golden retriever on a leash. The dog's name was Pancake, and he was panting happily, tail wagging, completely oblivious to the fact that every alien student in the arrival bay was staring at him like he just tracked mud across a white carpet. A Velkari student actually backed away, their antenna twitching in what Katie had learned was disgust. Another species, the insectoid Kresh, made a clicking sound that their translators rendered as, "Is that creature safe to be near the food preparation areas?" Katie just smiled and kept walking. Pancake sneezed. The orientation hall was impressive, she had to admit. Massive holographic displays showed different beast species from across the galaxy. The seats were designed to accommodate everything from the tiny pip people who stood barely 2 feet tall to the enormous granite folk who needed reinforced platforms. Katie found a human-sized seat near the back and settled in while Pancake curled up at her feet. That's when Instructor Vorith made his entrance. The guy was impressive in a terrifying sort of way. Easily 9 feet tall, covered in silver scales that caught the light, with 4 powerful arms and eyes that seemed to miss absolutely nothing. He'd been teaching at the academy for over 2 centuries, and everyone knew it. "Welcome, students," Vorith's voice rumbled through the hall, his translator rendering it in perfect English for Katie's benefit. "You are here because your species has identified you as having exceptional potential for beast handling. However, potential means nothing without discipline, study, and respect for the creatures in our care." He went on for a while about the Academy's history, its safety protocols, the different levels of training. Katie listened, but she was mostly watching how Vorith moved, how he gestured. There was confidence there, sure, but also something else. A kind of rigidity. Like someone who'd been doing things the same way for so long they'd forgotten there might be other options. "Let me be clear about something," Vorith continued, and his eyes swept across the room. When they landed on Katie, they lingered for just a moment longer than comfortable. "We have a 70% injury rate in your first year. Many of you will wash out. Some of you will be permanently scarred. This is not a school for the faint of heart." He pulled up a hologram showing a massive underground complex beneath the academy. "In the lower vaults, we house 12 creatures we classify as apex beasts. These are not training animals. These are beings of such power and danger that even viewing them requires level 5 protective equipment. In the 300-year history of this academy, only 5 individuals have successfully formed a bond with even one apex beast." The hologram cycled through images. A serpent made of what looked like solid darkness. A titan wreathed in flames. A crystalline swarm that moved like a school of fish made of broken glass. Each image made the other students shift uncomfortably in their seats. "These creatures represent the ultimate achievement in beast handling," Vorith said. "Most of you will never even see them in person. They are kept sedated and isolated for everyone's safety." That evening, the academy held a welcome feast in the grand hall. Long tables accommodated the various species' dietary needs. Katie found herself at the human section, which was mostly empty except for 2 other scholarship recipients who were still in transit. She ate her meal quietly, watching the social dynamics play out. The Velkari students clustering together. The Thornids engaged in what looked like silent psychic conversation. Everyone finding their tribes. She stood up, her chair scraping against the floor. The hall didn't go silent or anything dramatic like that, but enough beings noticed that a ripple of attention spread through the room. "Hey, so I have a question," Katie said, her voice carrying in the acoustically perfect hall. "Those 12 apex beasts in the vaults. If someone gave me access, I could probably tame all of them before the semester ends." For about 3 seconds, nobody reacted. It was like her words needed time to translate, to process, to actually compute in everyone's brains. Then Vorith started laughing. It was a deep, rumbling sound that shook his whole frame. Within seconds, the entire hall joined in. Clicks, chirps, buzzes, and sounds Katie didn't have names for, all blending together in what was unmistakably laughter. "Miss Sullivan," Vorith finally managed, wiping at his eyes with one of his 4 hands. "I appreciate human optimism, but you understand what you just said? You, with no natural beast bonding abilities whatsoever, believe you can accomplish in months what the galaxy's best have failed to do in centuries." Katie shrugged, scratching Pancake behind the ears. "Yeah, pretty much." Vorith's laughter redoubled. "Very well. I accept your challenge. This will indeed be educational, though perhaps not in the way you imagine. Consider this an official academic exercise." Around the hall, students were already pulling out their communication devices. The betting pools were forming before Katie even sat back down. The odds weren't in her favor. The next morning, Katie woke up to find her academy message inbox flooded with over 300 notifications. Apparently, the entire station had heard about her challenge, and the betting pools had gotten completely out of control. The current odds on her successfully taming even one apex beast were sitting at 200 to 1 against. The odds on her surviving the first attempt uninjured were considerably worse. She fed Pancake, took a shower, and met Instructor Vorith at the main elevator bank that led down to the vault levels. He was already waiting, all 4 arms crossed, looking like someone who'd just agreed to supervise a kindergartner attempting brain surgery. "Miss Sullivan," he said as they stepped into the elevator, "I want to make absolutely certain you understand what you're about to attempt. The Void Serpent we're visiting has killed 3 trained handlers and driven 12 others clinically insane. The psychological damage was so severe that 2 of them still cannot be in the same room as Darkness without experiencing complete mental breakdowns." Katie nodded, watching the floor numbers descend. They passed the regular training levels, the intermediate beast housing, the advanced containment sectors. The elevator kept going down. "The Void Serpent projects psychic attacks," Vorith continued. "It makes you feel the heat death of the universe. The end of everything. The complete and utter meaninglessness of existence stretched across infinite time. Beings with far more mental fortitude than humans have crumbled within seconds." "Sounds rough," Katie said. Vorith's scales rippled in what she'd learned was frustration. "I'm trying to give you an opportunity to withdraw honorably." "I appreciate that," Katie said genuinely. "But I'm good." The elevator doors opened onto a corridor that looked like something from a prison movie. Reinforced walls. Energy barriers humming at intervals. Warning signs in 17 different languages. They walked past several empty vaults until they reached one with red emergency lights pulsing above the entrance. Through the observation window, Katie got her first real look at the Void Serpent. It was beautiful in a terrifying way. Maybe 60 feet long, its body seeming to absorb light rather than reflect it. Where its scales should be was something that looked like the space between stars. Deep, endless black with occasional flickers of something that might have been distant galaxies or might have been her imagination. "The containment field will drop when I activate this panel," Vorith said, gesturing to a control station. "Emergency extraction can be triggered from here or from the panic button on your wrist communicator. The medical team is standing by. Are you absolutely certain about this?" Katie set down her backpack and unzipped it. She pulled out a sandwich wrapped in paper, a bag of beef jerky, and a water bottle. "Can you make sure Pancake gets his dinner if this runs late?" Vorith stared at her. "You're bringing food into a vault with an apex predator?" "I get cranky when I'm hungry." Figured the snake might be the same way. Before Vorith could formulate a response to that logic, Katie walked to the vault entrance. "Okay, let's do this." The energy barrier dissolved with a sound like reality unzipping. Katie stepped through. Behind her, she heard Vorith scramble to the observation station, no doubt pulling up every camera angle and preparing to hit the emergency extraction the moment things went wrong. The temperature inside the vault dropped immediately. Not physically cold, but cold in a way that went deeper. Like the chill you feel when you realize you've made a terrible mistake, except amplified by a factor of about 1,000. The Void Serpent's head rose from where it had been coiled in the center of the space. Its eyes, if they were eyes, fixed on Katie. And then the psychic assault hit. Most beings would describe what happened next as indescribable. The feeling of existence itself draining away. Purpose becoming meaningless. Hope revealed as a child's fantasy. The universe not just ending but never having mattered in the first place. Time stretching forward into an eternity of nothing, and backward to reveal that nothing had ever been different. Katie felt all of it. The full weight of cosmic insignificance crashing down on her consciousness like a tsunami of existential dread. She sat down cross-legged on the floor, unwrapped her sandwich, and took a bite. Through the observation window, Vortha's hand hovered over the emergency extraction button. His other hands were frantically pulling up Katie's vital signs. Heart rate elevated but steady. Brain activity showing signs of the psychic assault but no indication of the cascade failure that preceded mental breakdown. She was experiencing the attack, but somehow not collapsing under it. Inside the vault, Katie chewed her sandwich methodically. Turkey and Swiss on wheat. Pretty good, actually. The academy cafeteria knew what they were doing. The void serpent moved closer, its massive head lowering to her level. The psychic pressure intensified. Katie could feel it trying harder now, confused by prey that refused to react appropriately. The attack shifted, trying different angles. Showing her the death of everyone she'd ever loved. The failure of every dream she'd ever had. The pointlessness of every action she'd ever taken. Katie swallowed her bite and took another. She maintained eye contact with the serpent, not aggressive, not submissive, just present. Here's the thing about humans that the rest of the galaxy didn't quite understand yet. Humans came from Earth, a planet that had tried really hard to kill them for millions of years. They'd survived ice ages and droughts and predators that could run faster, bite harder, and see better in the dark. They'd made it through plagues and famines and disasters that wiped out 90% of their population. And somewhere along the way, humans had developed this weird ability to look at the universe's indifference and just kind of shrug. Yeah, existence is temporary and ultimately meaningless in cosmic terms. Cool. Still gotta eat lunch though. Katie tore off a piece of turkey from her sandwich and tossed it gently toward the void serpent. It landed about 10 feet from the creature's head. The serpent stopped its psychic assault, genuinely confused now. Prey didn't throw food. Prey ran or fought or broke mentally. Prey didn't just sit there eating sandwiches and sharing snacks. 2 hours passed. Then 4. Katie worked through her sandwich, drank some water, opened the beef jerky. She tore off strips and tossed them closer each time. Not trying to touch the serpent. Not trying to dominate it or bond with it or do any of the things she'd read about in the Academy's training materials. Just existing in the same space. Being consistently, stubbornly present. The void serpent slithered closer. Its psychic attacks had faded to a dull background hum, like it was testing on autopilot while it tried to figure out what was happening. This wasn't in its behavioral programming. Nothing had ever just sat with it before. By hour 6, the serpent was close enough that Katie could see the patterns in its scales. Not just black, but deep purples and blues that shifted like oil on water. Beautiful, really. She tossed another piece of jerky. This one landed right in front of the serpent's mouth. It paused, then slowly consumed the offering. Katie smiled. Good boy, she said quietly. Or go. Honestly, I have no idea. We'll figure it out. She reached out slowly, telegraphing the movement, and gently touched the side of the serpent's head. Its scales were cool and smooth, like polished stone. The void serpent's eyes closed. It leaned into the touch. In the observation room, Vortha's jaw literally dropped open. His translator made a sound like a computer trying to process an error. One of his hands grabbed the intercom. What technique are you using? Katie scratched behind where she guessed the serpent's jaw met its skull. No technique. I just waited for him to get curious. Everything gets curious eventually if you're patient enough. She settled in more comfortably, the massive predator now coiled partially around her like a scaly pillow. I'm calling him Spaghetti. He seems like a spaghetti. The betting pools across the academy exploded into chaos. Word spread through the academy like wildfire. By the next morning, every student knew that the human girl had spent 6 hours in a vault with the void serpent and walked out without a scratch. More than that, she'd walked out while the serpent followed her to the entrance like a puppy reluctant to see its owner leave. The observation decks outside the vaults became packed. Students skipped classes they'd paid thousands of credits to attend just to watch Katie work. Even professors started showing up, taking notes, arguing in hushed tones about what they were witnessing. Katie's approach to the second apex beast was somehow even more bizarre than the first. The magma titan lived in a vault where the temperature hovered around 400 degrees. Its body was literally made of molten rock, and it radiated heat that could cook most organic beings from 20 feet away. The previous handlers who'd attempted to bond with it had used advanced thermal suits that cost more than a small spacecraft. 2 of them still suffered from third-degree burns over 60% of their bodies. Katie showed up with a cooler full of ice packs and a pair of oven mitts. You cannot be serious, Vorth said, watching her tape ice packs to her arms and legs like some kind of discount armor. The thermal suits are standard equipment for a reason. Those suits are rigid though, right? Katie asked, adjusting an ice pack. Hard to move naturally in them. And this guy's been hostile to everyone because you all keep showing up dressed like you're going to war. She walked into the vault before Vorith could formulate a counter-argument. The heat hit her immediately, even with the ice packs. It was like opening an oven and sticking your head inside, except the oven was the size of a basketball court. The magma titan rose from its resting place, lava dripping from its shoulders. It was vaguely humanoid, maybe 15 feet tall, with eyes that glowed like blast furnaces. It roared, and the sound was like an avalanche mixed with a volcanic eruption. Katie stood there, sweating through her clothes, ice packs already starting to melt. She watched how the titan moved. There was something off about it. The way it shifted its weight, favoring its left side. The way its right arm hung slightly lower than its left. She'd seen this before. Her grandmother had moved the same way in her final years. Arthritis. Joint pain. The kind of chronic discomfort that made you irritable and snappish with everyone around you. "Hey buddy," Katie called out, pulling a fresh ice pack from her cooler. "I bet you're hurting pretty bad, huh?" She tossed the ice pack. It landed near the titan's feet and immediately started hissing and steaming. The creature looked down at it, confused. Then it picked up the ice pack with surprising gentleness and pressed it against its right shoulder joint. The relief was visible. The titan's aggressive posture relaxed slightly. Its eyes dimmed from white-hot to a calmer orange glow. Katie spent the next 3 hours just throwing ice packs and frozen gel wraps, watching where the titan applied them. Right shoulder. Lower back. Left knee. Mapping out its pain points like a physical therapist. By the end of the session, the deadly apex predator was lying on its side while Katie pressed a frozen towel against what she determined was basically a herniated disc situation. It made a sound like rocks grinding together, but softer. Almost like a purr. "You're just a big guy who hurts all the time, aren't you?" Katie said, swapping out a melted ice pack for a fresh one. "Nobody thought to check if you were in pain. They just assumed you were aggressive." The third apex beast was the Phase Stalker, a creature that existed in multiple dimensions simultaneously. You couldn't see all of it at once. Parts of it flickered in and out of reality, making it impossible to predict where it would be or what it would do. 3 handlers had been mauled because they literally couldn't see the attack coming from dimensions their eyes weren't equipped to perceive. The Academy's best strategy had been using psychic predictors who could sense across dimensional boundaries. It hadn't worked. The Phase Stalker moved too fast, existed in too many places at once. Katie tried something different. She showed up at the same time every day. 8 in the morning, local station time. She brought the same breakfast. Sat in the same spot. Made the same small talk, even though the creature couldn't understand her words. "Morning," she'd say, unwrapping her bagel. "It's Tuesday. Or Wednesday. Honestly, I lose track in space. How's your dimensional shifting going?" The Phase Stalker would flicker around the vault, appearing here, there, everywhere and nowhere. But Katie never flinched. Just kept to her routine. Humans, it turned out, were exceptional at pattern recognition and routine. 10,000 years of agriculture had wired their brains to think in seasons, cycles, planting schedules. Show up at the same time, do the same thing, expect the same result. By day 5, the Phase Stalker started appearing in the same spots when Katie arrived. By day 10, it was waiting for her at the entrance. By day 15, it had synced its dimensional phasing to her schedule. It existed more solidly during her visits, pulling itself mostly into her dimension because that's when the interesting thing happened. Katie started bringing 2 bagels. The observation galleries were standing room only now. Students from graduating classes were calling their families to tell them about the human who was rewriting everything they knew about beast handling. The betting pools had crashed because nobody wanted to bet against Katie anymore. Beast number 4 was the Stormcaller, a creature made of living lightning that had electrocuted anyone who came near it. Katie grounded herself with rubber boots and started a long-term desensitization program, gradually teaching it that not everything needed to be zapped. Beast 5 was the Void Screamer, whose sonic attacks could liquefy internal organs. Katie brought industrial ear protection and, over 2 weeks, taught it that screaming wasn't necessary to communicate. Turned out it was just lonely and had never learned volume control. Beast 6 through 10 followed similar patterns. Katie would observe, identify the actual problem beneath the aggressive behavior, and address it with patience and creativity. The crystal swarm that everyone thought was a hive of killers? They were bored. She brought a laser pointer and played with them like cats for an hour a day. Within a week, they were doing synchronized aerial performances. Vorath had stopped questioning her methods entirely. He just took notes now, his academic mind racing to process what he was witnessing. His entire understanding of beast handling was being dismantled and rebuilt in real time. How did we miss this? He asked Katie one evening over tea in his office. Around them, holographic displays showed footage of her sessions. We've had the greatest minds from 17 species working on these creatures for centuries. Katie shrugged, warming her hands on the teacup. You were all trying to dominate them. Force them into submission or establish mental control. Nobody just tried to understand what they actually needed. And where did you learn this approach? Earth, Katie said simply. We spent thousands of years figuring out how to live with predators that were bigger, faster, and stronger than us. Wolves. Big cats. Bears. We didn't beat them. We learned to see past the teeth and claws and recognize they were just animals with needs. Food. Safety. Companionship. Mental stimulation. Same things we needed. She sipped her tea. Every animal is the same in that way. Doesn't matter if it's from Earth or from another dimension or made of literal lightning. The basics don't change. Vorath's scales rippled in what Katie had learned was deep thought. There's one more beast, he said quietly. The Devourer. Katie nodded. I know. That's next. Katie, that one is different. It's not kept in the regular vaults. It's in a pocket dimension because it's too dangerous to exist in normal space. It has killed everyone who's ever encountered it. Every single person, no exceptions, no survivors. Then I guess it's time to change that pattern, Katie said, setting down her teacup. What do we know about it? The file on the Devourer was thicker than all the other Apex Beast files combined. Katie sat in the Academy's archives for 3 days straight, reading every report, watching every piece of footage, studying every scan and analysis. Pancake slept under the table while she worked, occasionally waking up to remind her that food and walks were still necessary parts of life. The Devourer had been discovered 200 years ago on a dead planet in the Outer Rim. A survey team had found it, and within 6 minutes, the entire team was gone. Not killed. Gone. Consumed so completely that not even molecular traces remained. The Galactic Council had sent a military response team. 4 to 7 soldiers with advanced weapons. They lasted 11 minutes. Eventually, the Academy's founders had managed to trap it using a pocket dimension generator. The creature had been locked away ever since, kept sedated with enough tranquilizers to knock out a small moon. Even viewing it through dimensional barriers was considered extremely dangerous. The thing radiated hunger. Pure, absolute, endless hunger that went beyond physical need into something almost metaphysical. 17 different handlers had attempted to bond with it over the centuries. All 17 had been consumed within seconds of entering its dimension. The Academy had stopped trying after handler number 12. The last 5 attempts had been volunteers who knew they probably wouldn't survive. Vorath had forbidden Katie from attempting it. The other instructors had overruled him in a closed-door session that, according to rumors, had involved a lot of shouting. Katie had earned her chance. The Academic Council couldn't deny her that, not after what she'd accomplished. But that didn't mean Vorath had to like it. Look at this pattern, Katie said, pulling up a holographic display in Vorath's office. It showed the Devourer's feeding schedule over 2 centuries. Every time they fed it, they calculated the amount based on its body mass. Standard protocol for beast nutrition. Correct, Vorath said. We used the Academy's established feeding algorithms. They account for size, metabolism, energy expenditure. But those algorithms assume you know what species you're feeding, Katie countered. She pulled up another display, this one showing biological scans. Nobody knows what species the Devourer is. The entire species is extinct. You've been feeding it based on guesswork. Vorath leaned forward, studying the data with 2 of his eyes while the other 2 watched Katie. What are you suggesting? I'm suggesting that it's not evil or impossible to tame. It's starving. It's been starving for 200 years, and that starvation has driven it completely insane. Katie zoomed in on a cellular analysis. Look at these markers here. And here. I'm not a xenobiologist, but I spent yesterday talking to Professor Kellenth in the biology department. These are signs of severe nutritional deficiency. She pulled up comparison scans from other species. It's like if you tried to feed a human nothing but sugar water. Sure, it's calories. Technically it's food. But you'd be missing proteins, vitamins, Minerals. You'd be hungry all the time no matter how much you ate. Your body would be screaming for what it actually needs. Vorith was silent for a long moment. The devourer requires specific nutrients that aren't in the standard feed. That's my theory. And I think I know what it needs. Katie pulled up a geological survey of the planet where the devourer had been found. The entire planet's crust is rich in viridium and crystallized ethium. Both are rare minerals. What if the devourer species needed those minerals to properly develop? What if it's not even fully grown? It's already the size of a cargo ship, Vorith protested. Yeah, and what if that's it as a baby? Katie asked. A malnourished baby that's been in pain for 2 centuries. The academic council met for 6 hours to debate Katie's theory. In the end, they approved her request, partly because the logic was sound, partly because they were curious, and partly because several council members had made significant bets on Katie's success and stood to win a lot of money. The pocket dimension portal was set up in the Academy's largest chamber. Emergency teams stood ready. Medical staff prepared for every possible outcome. Vorith checked and rechecked the extraction protocols, looking for any way to make this safer. There wasn't one. Katie stood in front of the portal wearing a specially designed backpack. Inside were synthesized bricks of viridium and ethium compounds, prepared by the chemistry department to be as bioavailable as possible. Each brick had cost more than a semester's tuition, and she was carrying 30 of them. The moment you enter, the devourer will sense you, Vorith said, his voice tight with concern. It moves faster than anything we've ever measured. If your theory is wrong, I won't be able to extract you in time. Katie adjusted the backpack straps. Pancake sat nearby, tail wagging, completely unconcerned about the deadly monster dimension his owner was about to enter. If I'm wrong, at least we tried something different. That's not comforting. Wasn't meant to be. Katie smiled. Ready when you are. The portal opened like reality tearing itself apart. Through it, Katie could see a space that didn't follow normal physical laws. Gravity seemed optional. Light bent in wrong directions. And in the center, she could see the devourer. The reports hadn't done it justice. It was massive, easily the size of a jumbo jet, with a body that seemed to be made of overlapping plates of dark chitin or metal or something in between. Its mouth, and there was definitely a mouth, was large enough to swallow a car whole. Dozens of eyes covered its head, all different sizes, all tracking movement with predatory focus. Katie stepped through the portal. The devourer moved immediately. Faster than something that size had any right to move. It crossed the distance between them in less than a second, mouth opening, teeth that looked like industrial shredders ready to consume this new intrusion into its prison. Katie didn't run. Didn't scream. She reached into her backpack, grabbed a mineral brick, and threw it with all her strength. The devourer's mouth snapped shut on the brick. There was a crunching sound like an avalanche. And then the creature stopped. Just completely froze mid-attack, 3 feet from Katie. She could hear its internal biology working, processing what it had just consumed. Chemical reactions happening at incredible speed. And then, for the first time in 200 years, the devourer felt something other than hunger. It felt satisfaction. The creature backed away from Katie, its dozens of eyes all fixed on her backpack. Not with aggression now. With desperate hope. Yeah, Katie said softly, pulling out another brick. I think I know what you need, buddy. She tossed the second brick. The devourer caught it gently, almost delicately, and consumed it with what might have been gratitude. Over the next hour, Katie fed the devourer all 30 mineral bricks. She watched as its biology began to stabilize, as the manic hunger in its eyes dimmed to something calmer. Its body even began to change, shrinking slightly as its metabolism corrected itself. Still huge, still powerful, but no longer swollen with starvation. By the end of the second day, Katie had established a feeding schedule. Proper nutrition, provided consistently, informs the devourer's body could actually use. The creature that had killed everyone who'd ever encountered it now waited patiently for meal times, had learned to take food gently from Katie's hand, and had even started making a sound that might have been contentment. On day 3, the devourer lowered its massive head and allowed Katie to touch it. Its plating was warm, almost feverish, but solid. Real. You're not a monster, Katie whispered. You're just a kid who's been hurting for a really long time. I'm sorry nobody figured this out sooner. She named it Boulder, because it reminded her of a big, solid, dependable rock. The kind you could build something on. Through the observation portals, Vorith watched with all 4 hands pressed against the glass. He was crying, he realized. Actually crying. 2 centuries of watching that creature suffer in imprisonment, and a human had solved the problem in 72 hours by asking the simplest possible question. Why is it hungry? The news didn't just spread through the Academy this time. It went galactic. Within a week, every major news network across 17 species was running the story. The human who had tamed all 12 apex beasts. The girl who had walked into a pocket dimension with the most dangerous creature in known space and walked out with it following her like a pet. Holovids of Katie sitting with spaghetti went viral. Images of her playing laser pointer with the crystal swarm got remixed into entertainment content. Boulder, the creature that had haunted nightmares for 2 centuries, was now shown accepting head scratches and making happy rumbling sounds. The academic community lost its collective mind. Delegations started arriving from universities across the galaxy. Professors who had spent lifetimes studying beast behavior showed up demanding to observe Katie's methods firsthand. Some came with skepticism, convinced there had to be some trick, some hidden technique she wasn't sharing. Others came with open minds, ready to learn. Katie handled it all with the same patient approach she used with the beasts. She gave lectures in the Academy's largest auditorium, the one usually reserved for graduation ceremonies. She walked professors through her thinking process, step by step, making it clear that there was no secret trick or hidden human ability. I just observe, she explained to an audience of 200 beings from 40 different species. I watch how the creature moves, what triggers its aggression, what calms it down. I look for patterns that suggest pain, boredom, fear, loneliness. And then I address those needs. A thorned professor raised a crystalline appendage. But surely your species must have some evolutionary adaptation that allows this? Some form of empathy or intuition that others lack? Katie shook her head. Not really. Humans just had a lot of practice because our planet tried really hard to kill us for a really long time. We were never the strongest or fastest or most specialized. We survived by being stubborn and adaptable and willing to try weird solutions when the normal ones didn't work. She pulled up images of Earth animals. Wolves. Horses. Elephants. Cats. Our ancestors looked at apex predators and pack hunters and animals that could stomp them flat, and instead of just running away or fighting them, they asked if maybe they could be friends. That's not a special ability. That's just curiosity mixed with optimism and a whole lot of patience. Another professor, this one of Elkari with distinguished silver antenna, stood up. But the devourer. You determined its nutritional needs in 3 days. Our best xenobiologists studied it for decades and found nothing. Because they were studying it as a monster, Katie replied. I studied it as an animal that wasn't doing well. There's a difference. When you assume something is just evil or aggressive by nature, you stop looking for reasons behind the behavior. You accept the aggression as a fundamental trait instead of a symptom of something else. Vorith, sitting in the front row, nodded slowly. He'd been thinking about this a lot over the past weeks. How many assumptions had he made over his 2 centuries of teaching? How many behaviors had he accepted as inherent to a species rather than responses to environment or treatment or unmet needs? The Academy's curriculum underwent a massive overhaul. Vorith led the effort personally, working 18-hour days to redesign centuries of established teaching methods. The new first-year course was called Observational Beast Psychology, and it was mandatory. Students learned to watch, to question assumptions, to look for the reasons behind behaviors rather than just trying to dominate or control. Katie was offered a permanent position on the teaching staff before she'd even technically graduated. She accepted on the condition that she could keep working with the 12 apex beasts. They'd become more than research subjects to her. They were her friends now, each with distinct personalities and needs. Spaghetti, it turned out, loved music. Katie would sit in his vault with a portable speaker, playing everything from classical to rock, watching how his scales rippled different colors with different songs. The Magma Titan, who she'd started calling Ember, needed his ice pack treatments twice a day and had developed a surprising fondness for having his backplate scratched with a metal rake. The Phase Stalker, now known as Blink, had learned to exist almost fully in Katie's dimension during their daily sessions and had started bringing her small objects from other dimensions as gifts. She had a collection of rocks that technically shouldn't exist in normal space. The Crystal Swarm performed aerial shows for tour groups now, their synchronized movements drawing gasps from visitors. The Stormcaller had learned to control its electrical output and now helped power portions of the Academy during energy-intensive research projects. Each beast had found a role, a purpose beyond being a dangerous thing locked in a vault. But the real change was happening in the students. Katie watched it during her teaching sessions. The way they approached beast handling was fundamentally different now. Less about control and dominance, more about understanding and cooperation. A crash student successfully bonded with a creature that had been considered impossible for his species by simply spending time observing what the creature enjoyed rather than trying to force a mental connection. 6 months after Katie's challenge, the Academy held a special symposium. Representatives from the Galactic Council attended, along with leaders from the major beast-handling guilds and academic institutions. The topic was officially new approaches to interspecies relations, but everyone knew it was really about what the humans had shown them. Katie stood on stage with Pancake sitting beside her, tail wagging. The irony wasn't lost on anyone in the audience. Behind her, a holographic display showed Pancake's genetic lineage, traced back thousands of years to wolves on Earth. "This is what I wanted to show you," Katie said, gesturing to the dog. 15,000 years ago, my ancestors encountered one of the most dangerous pack predators on our planet. Wolves could run faster than humans, bite harder, hunt better, see better in the dark. They were superior to us in almost every measurable way. She scratched behind Pancake's ears. But my ancestors didn't try to dominate the wolves or control them with some special ability. They shared food with them. They let the wolves follow them. They noticed that wolves liked routine and pack structures and clear social hierarchies. Over generations, those wolves became dogs. They chose to stay with us. And in return, we chose to love them. Katie looked out at the audience. "That's what I've been trying to tell you. The ability to bond across species lines isn't about power or special evolutionary traits. It's about empathy, patience, and the willingness to see another being as more than just a dangerous thing to be controlled. It's about recognizing that every creature, no matter how alien or scary, has needs and wants and feelings." A human counselor in the third row stood up. He was older, with gray hair and the kind of weathered face that came from decades of difficult negotiations. "Miss Sullivan, what you've accomplished here has implications far beyond beast handling. The Council has been watching. We've been considering how your methods might apply to other areas of galactic relations." Katie raised an eyebrow. "You mean like diplomacy?" "Exactly like diplomacy. We have species in the Council who have been in conflict for generations. Both sides convinced the other is fundamentally aggressive or unreasonable. Perhaps they simply haven't taken the time to understand what the other actually needs." Vorith stood up from his seat, all 4 arms spread in a gesture of emphasis. "The Sullivan Protocol, as we're calling it, has already revolutionized our field. But Miss Sullivan is correct that the applications go far beyond this academy. We've been trying to dominate or control the things we don't understand. What if we tried cooperation instead?" The symposium continued for 3 days. By the end, the Galactic Council had established a new diplomatic training program based on Katie's observational methods. Universities across dozens of worlds were restructuring their xenobiology and interspecies relations departments. The change was slow, because changing centuries of established thinking always is, but it was happening. Katie spent her evenings in the observation garden, a dome on the top level of the academy where you could see the stars. Her 12 companions had been given modified housing that allowed them to move more freely, to interact with each other under supervision. She sat there now, watching spaghetti coil around Boulder while the crystal swarm performed lazy patterns overhead. Pancake was asleep in her lap. Ember rested nearby, his internal glow dimmed to a comfortable warmth. Vorith found her there one evening, bringing tea as had become their tradition. He settled into a seat designed for his 4-armed frame. "I've been teaching for 214 years, he said quietly. "I thought I knew everything there was to know about beast handling. You showed me I'd stopped asking questions decades ago." "You weren't wrong about everything," Katie said diplomatically. "Your safety protocols probably saved my life a dozen times." "Perhaps. But I was wrong about the fundamental approach. Wrong about what these creatures needed. Wrong about assuming dominance was the only path to cooperation." He sipped his tea. "How did you know it would work? When you first made that challenge, how did you know?" Katie was quiet for a moment, watching her companions rest peacefully. "Honestly? I didn't know for sure. But on Earth, we have this saying about dogs. That every dog is just 3 treats and consistent kindness away from being your friend. I figured the universe was probably bigger and more complicated than I expected, but that rule might still apply." She smiled, scratching Pancake's ears. "Turns out I was right. The scale was different, and some of the treats needed to be mineral compounds instead of beef jerky, but the principle held up." Vorith's scales rippled with amusement. 3 treats and consistent kindness. That's going to be the title of my next academic paper. You're going to get so much hate mail from professors who spent decades on complex bonding theories. I'm looking forward to it, Vorath said, and he genuinely meant it. Above them, the stars turned slowly. Somewhere out there, the galaxy was learning a lesson that humans had figured out thousands of years ago on a little blue planet. That the scariest monster was usually just scared itself. That aggression was often pain. That patience and understanding could accomplish what force never would. And that sometimes, the most revolutionary idea was simply choosing to be kind.